The night after Loretta Miles was laid in the ground, somebody painted my front door like a warning. I didn't see it at first. I heard it. The soft scrape of a brush across metal, then footsteps retreating down the hallway. When I opened the door 2 inches, red paint dripped down in thick, slow tears. Widow. 5 letters, crooked and angry, bleeding into the groove of the doorframe. A beige envelope was taped beneath the word, right where a welcome sign should have been. Carter came up behind me, his hand landing on my shoulder. "Dani," he said low. "Close it." I tore the envelope free anyway. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no letterhead, no signature, just a sentence printed in clean, cruel font. "Sign the waiver by morning, or you'll lose everything." I stared at it until the words blurred, until I realized my knees were shaking. "Who would do this?" I whispered. Carter took the paper, read it once, then again. He didn't panic. Carter didn't do panic. He reached past me, shut the door, and threw the deadbolt. Then he checked the chain, checked the second lock, and finally pressed his forehead to the metal like he was forcing himself not to explode. "It's not random," he said. "They knew we'd be here. They knew tonight." Tonight was the night after the funeral, the night after we'd stood in a soaked cemetery while Carter's family cried like they loved Loretta, even though I'd watched them circle her like creditors. And the worst part? The night after I'd heard Aunt Patrice whisper to a man in a gray suit, "By Monday, she'll be gone." Carter turned, and his eyes found mine, dark, tired, and razor-sharp. "You didn't tell anyone about the clause, did you?" I swallowed. I didn't even know there was a clause. His gaze flicked to the paint on the door, then back to me. "My mother did." A coldness slid down my spine, because that word, clause, meant paperwork. It meant legal traps and signatures and stamps. It meant an inheritance clause written by a woman who knew exactly how hungry her relatives were. It meant a contested will waiting to happen. It meant my life had just become a courtroom, and I was standing in the middle of it, pregnant, exhausted, and married to a man I'd met in the same place people go to end their marriages. If you're listening right now, hold on to that thought. Because the truth is, none of this started with a funeral. It started with a courthouse wedding. 3 hours. That's how long I sat in the city clerk's office, staring at a plastic fern and trying not to cry in front of strangers. The air conditioning was too cold, the fluorescent lights too bright, and the chairs were the kind of molded blue plastic that made your back ache after 10 minutes. Damon Price, my fiancé, had stood me up before. This was the third time. At 3:17 p.m., my phone finally buzzed. Something came up. "Important meeting. Next time. Love you. No period after love you." Like he couldn't spare the extra second. My throat closed. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, then locked my phone and set it face down. Like if I couldn't see it, it couldn't cut me. Ms. Higgins, the clerk, an older woman with thick glasses and a voice that tried to be kind even when she was tired, looked over the counter at me with pity. "Honey," she said, glancing at the wall clock, "office hours are almost over." "I know," I managed. She hesitated. "Do you want to reschedule?" I laughed, but it came out broken. "For what? So he cannot show up again?" Her shoulders dropped. "I'm sorry, sweetie." I stood, smoothing down my dress with hands that didn't feel like mine. My purse was heavy against my hip, not because of makeup or perfume, but because of the folded ultrasound report inside, my real reason for wanting to sign those papers that day. I'd planned to tell Damon right after we got our license. We weren't just getting married, I was going to say. We're having a baby. Now that paper in my purse felt like evidence of my stupidity. As I turned toward the exit, I caught my reflection in the glass partition. Eyes too shiny, smile gone. And then I saw him. On the other side of the room, in the smaller waiting area where people handled quick filings, sat a man in a black shirt with his elbows on his knees. He'd just ended a phone call. His hand went to his temple like he was trying to press back a headache that had been growing for years. He looked up, and our eyes met through the glass. It wasn't flirtation. It was recognition, the empathy of someone who had also been left standing. Ms. Higgins followed my gaze. Maybe she couldn't stand watching another woman fold herself into silence. Either way, she tried to crack the gloom with a joke. "Well," she said, tilting her head toward him, "that handsome young man over there has been waiting half the day, too. Word is, he got stood up for the third time as well." Then she lifted one eyebrow, like she was daring the universe to do something different. "You two would make a lovely couple," she said. "At least this beautiful day won't be wasted." Time slowed. The hum of the fluorescent lights sharpened. Thunder outside sounded like a drumline. The man stood. He didn't hesitate. He walked toward me, shoulders squared. Rain had dampened the edges of his hair, and when he got close, I caught the faint scent of tobacco and clean soap. Up close, he wasn't pretty. He was handsome in a way that came from survival, eyes that didn't waste emotion, a mouth set like it was used to holding back words. He stopped a foot away and spoke like he was reading a contract. "My name is Carter Miles," he said. "I'm 30. I own my own company. I don't have debt. My parents are living. I have one aunt who talks too much." "If you're serious," he continued, "and you need a marriage right now, we can do it." My heart slammed against my ribs. Not from romance, from the insanity of it. From the fact that for the first time all day, a man was looking at me like my time mattered. In my mind, Damon's message replayed like an insult. "Next time, love you. Why should I leave here humiliated? Why should I carry my child into a future where the father treated us like an inconvenience?" I tightened my grip on my purse strap and lifted my chin. "My name is Danielle Booker," I said. "Danny? I'm 29. And I have all my paperwork." Ms. Higgins's mouth fell open. She glanced at the clock, sighed, and reached for the stamp. "Okay," she muttered. "ID's on the counter." The process was fast. Too fast. That's what makes a courthouse wedding so dangerous. It doesn't give your heart time to catch up to your signature. Carter and I stood side by side while Ms. Higgins slid forms toward us. Our hands moved in unison, signing names on lines that suddenly looked like cliff edges. Rain began to hammer the windows like it was applauding our madness. When Ms. Higgins stamped the final page, the sound was loud in the small room. A firm final thud. She handed us the marriage certificate while still staring at us like we were a magic trick she didn't understand. "Congratulations," she said weakly. Carter folded the paper once and tucked it into the inside pocket of his jacket like it was a tool, not a promise. Then he looked at me, and any softness I might have imagined was gone. His eyes reflected only reality. "Let's go," he said. "It's too late to regret it now." That was my wedding day. No music, no family, no photos, just rain, fluorescent lights, and a man I'd met through a pane of glass. Carter's place was on the 12th floor of a mid-range condo that smelled like fresh paint and nothing else. No family photos. No clutter that said someone lived there. Just black and white furniture and a silence that made my wedding dress feel louder. He offered me a glass of water, then sat across from me, keeping a careful distance. "We need to be clear," he said. "This is a marriage of convenience, not a love story." The words should have offended me. Instead, they steadied me. Love was what Damon had used to keep me waiting. Carter rubbed a hand over his jaw. "My mother is dying," he said. "Lung cancer. The doctors are talking weeks, not years. She wants to see me settled, and my family—" His mouth tightened. "My family thinks they're entitled to everything she owns." I listened, numb, while the rain slid down the windows behind him. When he finally looked up, his eyes held something raw and tired. "I want her last days to have peace." My conscience burned. I couldn't let him carry my secret. So I told him about the ultrasound in my purse, the baby, Damon. I braced for anger, for regret. Carter just stared at the wall for a long moment, then exhaled. "Then we're both trapped," he said quietly. "You need a name for that child. I need a wife for my mother's peace." He laid out rules like boundaries on a map. I'd take the bedroom, he'd take the couch. In public, we'd hold hands. In private, we'd tell the truth, at least to each other. The next morning, we walked into the hospital with our story rehearsed. Friends for years, feelings grew slowly, decided to make it official. Loretta Miles looked at me once, like she'd known me a lifetime, and smiled with a gentleness that made my throat tighten. When she pressed an old bracelet into my palm, her fingers were warm but fragile. "Take care of my boy," she whispered. "And don't let anybody bully you, not in this family." By the time she passed, the family showed up in black clothes and bright eyes. At the funeral, they hugged Carter, then turned to me with a polite, poisonous sweetness that says, "We see you, and we don't accept you." Aunt Patrice leaned close enough that only I could hear her perfume and her threat. "Enjoy your little moment," she murmured. "My sister's gone, and the house comes back to blood. Sign what you're told, and you'll walk away clean." That was 3 nights ago. Tonight, someone decided words weren't enough. They brought paint. Back in the present, Carter set the threatening note on our kitchen counter as if it were contaminated. "Pack a bag," he said. "Just in case." "In case of what?" My voice cracked. "In case they drag me into court? In case your aunt—" "In case this turns into what my mother always knew it would," he cut in, and his restraint finally slipped enough for me to hear the anger underneath. "They're coming for that house. They're coming for what she left. And you—" He stopped, breathing through his nose, forcing himself calm. "And you are standing between them and it," he finished. I looked at the red paint again. Widow. I wasn't a widow. Carter was alive, standing right there. A husband by paper, a stranger by history. So why did that word feel like a prophecy? I pressed a hand to my stomach, protective without thinking. Carter's gaze dropped to the gesture, and something flashed in his eyes, something almost tender, before it vanished. "Dani," he said quietly, "whatever this started as, you're my wife in the eyes of the law. That means they can't intimidate you out of it. And if they try," his jaw set, "then we make sure the law sees what they're doing." Outside, rain picked up again, drumming on the balcony rail like a countdown. I swallowed hard. "Carter, what exactly did your mother put in that will?" His answer came like a warning shot. "She put you in it. And somewhere in her papers is a safe deposit box key, one I haven't found yet. But the people outside our door, they're searching for it too, already, tonight, somehow." And right then, as the red paint dried on our door and thunder rolled overhead, I understood something that made my blood run cold. I hadn't just married a stranger in a courthouse wedding. I'd married into a war. So don't go anywhere. Because what happened next wasn't just family drama. It was a fight for a home, a name, and a baby that didn't ask to be born into any of this. And if you're watching with me, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what city you're listening from. Because I need to know I'm not alone in this storm. Carter didn't sleep after the paint showed up. Neither did I. He moved through the condo, checking locks and the hallway camera feed. I stayed at the kitchen table with that beige envelope and its single sentence, reading it until the words stopped looking real. "Sign the waiver by morning, or you'll lose everything." Lose what? A house I didn't buy? A marriage I didn't plan? Carter set a mug of black coffee in front of me. "Drink," he said, practical. My hands shook around the warmth. "Tell me what your mother did," I said. "Tell me what I married into." He leaned back against the counter, eyes tired but controlled. "My mother didn't believe in luck," he said. "She believed in paper, receipts, witnesses. She used to tell me, the truth sits in a file cabinet when people won't carry it in their mouths." That line hit hard, because Damon Price had built our whole relationship on words that evaporated the moment they were inconvenient. Carter's gaze held mine. He didn't rush me, so I started at the only place that made sense. "The first time Damon didn't show up," I said, "he called and acted like he was the victim. Client emergency, baby. You know how it is. The second time," I continued, "he sent a text. No call, no real apology. And I still stayed. My throat tightened, remembering the blue plastic chair, the two bright lights, the way the clerk kept glancing at the clock like she was watching my dignity drain out in real time. And the third time, I said, voice flatter now. He wrote, "Important meeting, next time. Love you." I looked down at my purse. The ultrasound report was still inside, folded like a secret. I found out I was pregnant a week before the signing, I admitted. I thought we'd sign the license, and then I'd show him. I thought it would change everything. It didn't, I added quickly, because the truth needed to be said. It just made me more desperate to make the day happen, because if we were married, at least the baby would have a name. Carter's eyes flicked to my stomach, then back up. And then Ms. Higgins made her joke, he said. I nodded. The clerk's tired humor, the way she pointed across the glass to the other waiting area, the man in black with the exhausted eyes. You looked like you'd been waiting on a funeral, I told Carter. Not a wedding. He didn't deny it. My mother was still alive that day, he said, but she was already dying. The kitchen felt colder. Lung cancer, Carter said quietly. Stage 4. His jaw worked once. Her last wish was simple. She wanted to see me settled before she closed her eyes. And your ex? I asked, remembering the emptiness behind his calm. He gave a humorless half-smile. Left when she realized sickness doesn't come with an exit sign. After that, he told me, he stopped dating. He worked, visited Loretta, and watched his relatives circle, waiting for her to slip. My Aunt Patrice, he said, voice sharpening, cries loudest in church and counts money fastest in private. I remembered her at the hospital, squeezing my hand. Sweet girl, she'd called me, smiling like a blessing. She didn't like that my mother bought that house on Magnolia Street, Carter said. Didn't like that my mother left the small town and made a clean life. He paused. Patrice believes blood is a deed. So this is about the house, I said. It's about what it represents, he corrected. Security, control. And me? I asked. Carter's gaze dropped to the note. You're the piece they didn't plan, he said. My mother knew they'd pressure her, so she wrote a will with conditions. An inheritance clause. A fence built out of legal language. I stared at him. What kind of condition? He hesitated. There's a clause tied to my marriage, he said. She wouldn't give details. She just said, do this right, or you'll learn why I wrote it the way I did. So she wanted you married. Yes, Carter said, but not for romance, for protection. I forced a laugh with no joy. Congratulations! We're a marriage of convenience and a legal shield. It's still a courthouse wedding with a real certificate, he said, and real consequences. He crossed to a small drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder worn at the corners. He set it on the table without opening it. She gave me that 2 weeks ago, he said. She told me not to touch it until after she was gone. She said the rest, the proof, the truth, was somewhere else. Where? A safe deposit box, Carter said. There's a key. She hid it in the house. She said if I couldn't find it, I didn't deserve what was inside. Safe deposit box key. Proof. Truth. Loretta had planned for war after her death. And now, her family had started the war early. I thought back to my first visit with Loretta after the courthouse wedding, before the weather turned and before her breathing got shallow. She'd taken my hand and held it longer than polite. This family loves to smile while they sharpen, she'd murmured, eyes sliding to Patrice across the room. If anyone asks you to sign anything when I'm gone, you call Carter first. You hear me? At the time, I'd assumed she meant hospital forms and end-of-life paperwork, the sad administrative stuff. Now I understood she meant an inheritance clause, a contested will, and a probate court fight that would begin the minute she stopped breathing, and she chose me, her brand-new daughter-in-law, as the lock on that fence, whether I was ready for this fight or not tonight. At the funeral, Patrice hugged me for the cameras, then leaned in close enough for her lipstick to brush my ear. You won't be here by Monday, she whispered. I'll make sure of it. I told myself it was just cruelty, mourning twisted into spite, but the paint on our door proved it was a plan. Deadlines, messengers, and a waiver already drafted somewhere, waiting for my signature like a trap door. I rubbed my palms together. So you think Patrice is behind the paint? Patrice or someone working for her, Carter said. That note isn't random, it's a countdown. My phone buzzed on the table. The name on the screen tightened my chest. Damon. Carter didn't reach for it. You don't have to answer, he said. I did anyway. I put it on speaker because if Damon was going to drag me back into his mess, I wanted a witness. Dani, Damon said, smooth as if I hadn't sat in that clerk's office for 3 hours like an abandoned coat. Where are you at? I'm taking you to dinner. You owe me more than dinner, I said. He chuckled. Baby, stop acting like I did it on purpose. I stopped acting, I replied. I started deciding. A beat, then irritation. Where are you? You don't know where I am, I said. Then tell me. I looked at Carter. He gave a small nod, steady as a courtroom oath. I'm with my husband, I said. Damon laughed, sharp. Your husband? Dani, stop. I didn't argue. I sent him the photo of the marriage certificate Carter and I had signed in the same building he'd treated like optional. The line went quiet. When Damon spoke again, his voice had changed. You're pregnant with my child, he said, low and possessive. Meet me. Right now. I'm not meeting you, I said. If you don't come, I'll show up at your job, he hissed. I'll embarrass you. There it was, his favorite currency, shame. Carter leaned forward, voice calm, cold. Damon, he said, speaking for the first time. Damon's breath caught. Who is that? The man she married, Carter answered. And the man recording this call. Silence. Then Damon hung up. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady now. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. Carter lifted the waiver threat again, eyes scanning it like code. Now you see, he said. It's not just my family. I swallowed. So what do we do? We don't sign, he said. We document. We stay visible. And tomorrow we find that safe deposit box key before they do. I nodded, and a strange, fierce clarity took hold. Because a marriage of convenience might have dragged me into this, but a woman holding proof could drag the truth out of hiding, no matter how many people tried to paint her into a corner. At 6:12 the next morning, my phone alarm went off like nothing in my life had changed. Rain whispered at dawn. Carter was already awake, dressed in dark jeans and a hoodie, standing by the peephole like he expected the hallway to bite. He didn't say, "Good morning." He just held up his phone and showed me a paused clip from the building camera. A man in a maintenance cap, head down, shoulders hunched, rolling a small paint bucket on a dolly. He stopped at our door for less than 10 seconds. Brush, tape, gone. You recognize him? Carter asked. I stared until my eyes watered. No. He didn't look up once, Carter said. He knew exactly where the camera was. My stomach tightened. The word widow flashed in my mind like a neon sign. Last night, it had felt like a threat. This morning, it felt like a label they were trying to staple to my skin. Before I'd even earned it. Carter slid a clean t-shirt across the counter. Change, he said. We're going to Magnolia. Magnolia Street was Loretta's house, the house that had become a rumor with walls. It sat 20 minutes away, on a quiet block where the trees leaned over the sidewalks like nosy neighbors. Carter drove with both hands on the wheel, jaw clenched, eyes scanning mirrors, like he expected Patrice's Lexus to appear out of thin air. I kept my hand on my lower belly, not because the baby was showing much yet, but because fear has a way of making you touch the places that matter. I could feel the small, private life inside me, quiet and steady, and it made the world's noise feel even more cruel. Rule number 1, Carter said as we pulled onto the highway. No signing anything, no matter what they say, no matter who cries. Rule number 2? I asked. He glanced at me. You stay where I can see you. The words shouldn't have comforted me the way they did. Damon had always kept me waiting in the dark. Carter kept me in the light. As we drove, my mind dragged itself backward to the funeral. The part of this story I'd tried not to replay because grief was heavy enough without adding anger to it. Loretta's funeral had been the kind of beautiful that makes you sick. The florist had overdone it, and the church smelled like lilies and money. Patrice arrived in a veil that cost more than my rent used to be. Jalen wore a black suit with white sneakers, like he was too important for gravity. Reggie Sloane stood near the front, hands folded like a man practicing holiness. And Carter, my husband on paper, had stood at the casket with his shoulders rigid, jaw clenched, eyes dry. He didn't cry. He looked like he was holding a dam in place with his ribs. I remember the pastor saying, Loretta Miles was a woman of integrity, and Patrice sobbing so loudly people turned their heads. But I also remember her catching my eye through her tears and giving me a look like, don't get comfortable. After the service, when people lined up to give condolences, Patrice hugged Carter first and held him too long, whispering things that made his eyes harden. Then she turned to me. Her arms went around me in a perfumed squeeze that felt like handcuffs. Sweet girl, she said for the crowd, voice trembling with fake grief. We're so grateful you were there for Loretta. Then she leaned close enough that only I could hear the truth. Enjoy your little moment, she whispered. My sister's gone, and the house comes back to blood. Sign what you're told, and you'll walk away clean. That was when I realized the funeral wasn't just a goodbye. It was a countdown. When we turned onto Magnolia, I saw 2 cars already parked in front of Loretta's house. One belonged to Aunt Patrice, a white Lexus that always looked freshly waxed. The other was a black sedan with tinted windows. Company, Carter murmured. He parked half a block down. We don't walk in like prey, he said. We walk in like we belong. The front yard smelled like wet grass and magnolia blooms. The porch steps were slick, and my sneakers squeaked as we climbed. Before Carter could reach for the knob, the door swung open. Aunt Patrice stood there in a black robe with a satin collar, hair wrapped in a scarf like she'd just rolled out of bed, except her lipstick was perfect. Her eyes flicked to my stomach, then to Carter. Well, she said, smiling too wide. Look who finally showed up. Behind her, I saw Jalen leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, bored and predatory at the same time. And in the living room, sitting on Loretta's couch like he paid rent, was a man in a gray suit holding a legal pad. Reggie Sloane, the family attorney. Patrice stepped aside. Come in. We were just talking about next steps. Carter's body went still beside me. Next steps for what? For your mama's affairs, Patrice said. The will, the house, the paperwork. My throat tightened at the word paperwork. My whole life had changed because of paperwork. First a courthouse wedding certificate, now a will with teeth. Reggie stood. Mr. Miles, Mrs. Miles. I flinched at the title. Mrs. Miles still felt like a costume, the kind you wear for a play you didn't audition for. I'm sorry for your loss, Reggie said. Your mother left clear instructions. Carter didn't sit. You called a meeting the morning after the funeral? Patrice waved a hand. Time doesn't stop because we're sad. Reggie opened a folder. Loretta's will is filed. Probate court will schedule the first hearing within the month. In the meantime, there are immediate matters regarding occupancy and maintenance of the property. Occupancy, Carter repeated, flat. Reggie's eyes flicked to me. Yes, the property is currently unoccupied. I'm occupying it, Carter cut in. It's my mother's house. Patrice laughed softly. Baby, you live in that condo. And besides, you know Mama didn't put your name on that deed for a reason. Reggie cleared his throat. Loretta included an inheritance clause specific to this property, a conditional bequest. It is unconventional. Carter's voice lowered. Read it. Reggie adjusted his glasses and read. Item 4. The Magnolia Street property is to be held in trust for my son, Carter Miles, with the following condition. If Carter is legally married at the time of my death, and remains legally married for a period of 12 consecutive months thereafter. Then his spouse, my daughter-in-law, shall receive full ownership of the property in her name alone. Silence dropped, heavy as wet cloth. My brain snagged on the phrase "in her name alone." It wasn't protection for Carter. It was protection from Carter. Protection from the family using him as a lever. Loretta had made me the lock on a door none of them could kick in without leaving footprints. Reggie continued, "If Carter is not married at the time of my death, or if the marriage is dissolved or annulled within 12 months, the property shall revert to the Miles Family Development Fund, administered by Patrice Miles." My stomach dropped. This wasn't a gift. It was a trap with a ribbon on it. Carter exhaled slowly. "She did that on purpose." Patrice snapped her fingers at Reggie. "Give them the other papers." Reggie slid a sheet across the coffee table toward Carter. "Disclaimer of interest. A waiver." Patrice leaned toward me. "All you have to do, Dani, is sign that. You walk away with a little money, and we keep the house in the family." "I don't want your money," I said. Patrice's eyes narrowed. "You don't want a fight you can't afford." "Neither do you," Carter said, voice low. Patrice's smile turned sharp. "This courthouse wedding was a stunt. Everyone knows it." Jalen chuckled. "Yeah, cuz. You really married a stranger?" Heat rushed to my face. My hand went to my stomach again, protective without thinking. Patrice saw the gesture, and her expression sharpened. "Oh," she said softly. "Now it makes sense." Carter stepped forward. "Don't." Patrice ignored him. "You're pregnant, aren't you? By somebody else? That's why you rushed." My lungs forgot how to work. The fact that she could guess so easily made me feel naked. Carter's voice dropped. "That's none of your business." Patrice leaned back, satisfied she'd drawn blood. "Don't let this woman drag you into a contested will for a house she didn't earn." Something inside me snapped. Not my temper, my shame. Shame was the leash Damon had used for years. "Your sister wrote that clause," I said, voice steady. "If you want to be mad at her." Patrice's smile vanished, then returned colder. "Loretta was sick," she hissed. "She was manipulated." Carter's eyes turned ice. "By who, Patrice? You?" Reggie tried again, cautious. "The waiver is optional. However, it would simplify matters." "I'm not signing," I said. Patrice's voice rose like she'd been waiting for permission. "Fine. Then we do this the hard way. We'll petition for annulment. We'll argue fraud, false pretenses. We'll bring your little secret into probate court and let the judge decide how real your marriage is." My throat went tight. Fraud? My secret turned into a weapon. Carter didn't blink. "Petition whatever you want. I'm not dissolving my marriage for your convenience." Patrice leaned close enough that her perfume burned my nose. "Then you better keep her close," she murmured. "People get nervous in storms." We left, and outside a white SUV rolled past slow, like it was counting us. The moment Carter started the car, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. A text appeared. "You got 24 hours to sign. Don't make this ugly." Then another message, from a different unknown number, as if the threat needed backup singers. "We know where you work." My skin prickled. I hadn't told Patrice my job. That meant someone else was feeding them information, or watching me. Carter read over my shoulder. "They're escalating," he said. "Okay." "Okay," I echoed. "That's all you've got?" "Okay means we move smart," he said. "We find the safe deposit box key and whatever my mother hid. Then we let the law do what it's supposed to do." I wanted to believe the law was a shield, but I'd watched enough people with money twist rules into knots. I'd also watched Damon charm his way out of responsibility every time, smiling while I did the understanding for both of us. As Carter drove, my own phone rang again. My manager. I didn't answer. My stomach was too tight to speak. When we reached my office building, I found out why. A security guard stood near the lobby entrance, arms crossed, posture stiff. He spotted me and pointed toward a man pacing by the reception desk like he owned the air. Damon. Wrinkled shirt. too much cologne, that restless, entitled energy like the world was late for him. He saw me and smiled wide, like we were on a date. "There she is," he called, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My fiancée." The word made my face burn. Heads turned. Whispers started like wind through dry leaves. Carter's hand slid to the small of my back. "Keep walking," he murmured. Damon's smile faltered when he noticed Carter. His eyes flicked over Carter's clothes. Simple, clean, no flashy watch. And Damon's mouth twisted into contempt. "So this is him," Damon said. "The fake husband." Carter didn't react. He stepped between Damon and me without making it dramatic. The movement alone was a statement. Damon leaned closer, voice dropping, but not low enough. "Dani, don't do this," he said. "You're pregnant with my baby. You can't just—" "You don't get to claim me now," I snapped. My voice surprised even me. "You left me in that clerk's office like trash." Damon scoffed. "I had a meeting." "You always have a meeting," I said. "Funny how you never miss the ones that benefit you." His eyes flashed. "Watch your mouth." Carter's voice was calm, cold. "Step away from my wife." Damon laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. "Your wife? Man, she's mine. She was gonna marry me." Carter tilted his head. "She didn't." Damon's gaze cut to me. "You think this marriage of convenience is going to save you?" he hissed. "You think that inheritance clause is yours because you signed some courthouse wedding paper?" "Dani, you don't even know what you signed." My stomach dropped. He said inheritance clause like he'd seen it. Carter's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about that?" Damon's lips curved. "People talk," he said again, smug. "Especially when there's property and money involved." Then he leaned close enough that only I could hear him, his breath hot with ego. "Meet me after work," he whispered, "or I'll tell everybody here why you ran. I'll tell them whose baby that is." My hands went cold. Carter's hand tightened at my back, sensing me freeze. "We're leaving," he said. "We're not—" I began. Carter cut me off gently but firmly. "We're leaving," he repeated. Damon stepped into our path. "No," he said, voice rising. "We're talking." The security guard moved closer, wary. A couple of coworkers hovered by the elevator, pretending not to watch. Carter didn't raise his voice. He didn't puff up. He just took out his phone and clicked record. "This is America," he said evenly. "You don't block a woman's movement. You don't harass her at work. You do, and you create evidence." Damon's face reddened. "You think I'm scared of a camera?" "I think you're scared of consequences," Carter said. Damon shoved a finger toward me. "Dani, tell him to stop. Tell him you're coming with me." I lifted my chin. "I'm not coming with you," I said. Something flickered in Damon's eyes, rage disguised as heartbreak. "Fine," he spat. "Then I'll file for paternity. I'll demand a DNA test the second that baby is born, and I'll make sure the court knows you married under false pretenses." He threw the last phrase like a rock. Carter's voice didn't change. "Keep talking," he said. "Say it again, nice and clear." Damon realized, too late, that he was auditioning for a judge. He jerked back, forced a smile. "Whatever," he muttered, then turned and stalked out, shoulders stiff. My knees felt weak. Carter guided me outside into the wet air, away from the whispers in the lobby. "You okay?" he asked. I laughed once, bitter. "No," I said, "but I'm still standing." Carter's mouth tightened like he approved of that answer. "Good," he said, "because they're going to try again." We didn't go back inside. Carter drove me to a coffee shop across from my building, the kind of place with cameras over the counter and a line of tired people who didn't care about other people's drama. We sat in the corner. Carter opened his laptop and started typing. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Documenting," he said. "Timestamps, witnesses, your job's cameras, the building security guard's name. We stack paper on paper until their story collapses." My phone buzzed. An email, From Reggie Sloan. Subject: Request for cooperation. I opened it with shaking fingers. It was polite, professional, and full of poison. It encouraged me to sign the disclaimer to avoid unnecessary stress during pregnancy. It attached a PDF labeled Draft Annulment Petition. My vision blurred. He already drafted annulment papers, I whispered. Carter's eyes hardened. That means he expects you to fold, he said. And if I don't? Carter's gaze lifted to the street outside. Across the road, the black sedan with tinted windows was parked at the curb. My breath caught. That car? I see it, Carter said. His voice stayed calm, but his shoulders tensed. We leave in 10 minutes. Not sooner. Not later. We don't give them the satisfaction of chasing. I sipped coffee that tasted like metal. When we left, we took side streets back to Magnolia. Carter insisted we use the house while it was empty. If Patrice thinks she can control it, we remind her it's still Loretta's, he said. We spent the afternoon inside Loretta's house after Patrice left, using Carter's legal right as her son to access the property. The place felt sad and careful, still full of Loretta's order. Carter checked drawers, behind frames, inside old recipe tins. I opened labeled envelopes, reading bits of Loretta's life like I was trespassing inside a mind that had trusted me. In the kitchen, a calendar still hung on the wall. The square for last Thursday was circled. In Loretta's handwriting, it said, "Tell Carter, don't be afraid." My throat tightened. In the back bedroom, Loretta's room, sunlight slanted across the bedspread. On the nightstand sat a framed photo of Loretta holding Carter as a little boy. I turned the frame over. A tiny handwritten note, in Loretta's neat script. Look where the truth sits quiet. Truth sits quiet, I whispered. File cabinet. Carter went to the closet, pulled open the sliding door, and there it was. An old metal filing cabinet tucked behind hanging coats, like Loretta had hidden her truth under everyday fabric so nobody would think to look. The top drawer was locked. Carter muttered under his breath, pulled out a small multi-tool, and worked the lock with steady hands. It popped with a soft click. Inside were folders labeled in Loretta's handwriting. Birth certificates, insurance, a thick folder marked Patrice. Carter pulled it out and opened it. Receipts, copies of checks, letters from a bank, a transfer request with Patrice's name on it. Notes in the margins, Loretta's angry little underlines. She tried to move money, Carter whispered. I flipped another page and saw Reggie's signature on a consultation invoice. Then another paper, an email printout, where Reggie described Loretta as confused and emotional. The words made my skin crawl. At the bottom of the folder was a small velvet pouch. Carter poured the contents into his palm. A brass key, small, heavy, plain, safe deposit box key. My breath left my lungs. Carter closed his fist around it. They didn't find it, he said. My phone buzzed again. Another text. You got until 9 p.m. tonight, or the eviction notice hits your door. Eviction? I whispered. They can't without a court order, Carter said. But Patrice doesn't care about can't. He slid the key into his pocket and carried the Patrice folder with us. Bank, he said. Now. Magnolia Community Bank was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your footsteps sound guilty. The manager, a woman with silver hair, recognized Carter and offered condolences. When Carter introduced me as his wife, she nodded like she'd already decided to be on the side of decency. She led us to the vault and placed the box on the table. Carter inserted the brass key. Click. Inside wasn't money. It was paper. A sealed envelope addressed in Loretta's handwriting, Carter and Dani, plus a flash drive wrapped in tissue and a small spiral notebook. Carter broke the seal. His eyes moved across the letter, and his face changed. Tightness, then pain, then something like grim respect. What does it say? I whispered. She knew, Carter said. He read out loud, low, like the words were too sharp for the air. My son, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are finally being still long enough to listen. Patrice will tell you I was confused. She will lie if it gets her what she wants. Carter swallowed and kept going. I wrote the widow's clause because blood doesn't protect you. Love does. If you chose a wife, choose one who stands. If you married in haste, then learn to make haste into something honorable. My eyes filled. To my daughter-in-law, I don't know your story, but I know the look in a woman's eyes when she has been made to wait for a man who doesn't deserve her. Do not let my family bully you. Do not sign away your safety to make them comfortable. My throat tightened. It was like she'd seen me in that clerk's office, in my wedding dress, swallowing humiliation like medicine. Carter read the last part, voice rough. I kept proof. I kept paper. I kept what they thought they could hide. The box contains the truth about Reggie Sloan and Patrice's fund, and it contains the name of the man outside the family who helped them. Outside the family! Carter looked up. Damon. My stomach rolled. Carter opened the spiral notebook. It wasn't a diary, it was a record. Dates, names, notes. Reggie Sloan asked me to sign transfer, refused. Patrice brought papers, said it's for taxes, refused. Met Damon Price at Patrice's request, charming, smelled like lies, asked about Danny's pregnancy. My fingers went cold. How would he know? I whispered. My phone rang like an answer. Damon. Carter nodded at me. Speaker? I hit accept. Danny, Damon said, smooth. We need to talk. I'm busy, I said. I heard you did something crazy, he said. Married some dude. That's not you. It is now, I said. Damon exhaled like he was patient. I heard there's property involved. A house, an inheritance clause. You think you're slick. My skin prickled. He knew too much. What do you want? I asked. I want my child, he said, and I want you to stop embarrassing me with this marriage of convenience. You stood me up, I said. How am I the embarrassment? His sweetness fell away. Because you're making a spectacle, and I don't like losing. Then his voice went soft again, like a blade wrapped in velvet. You sign whatever they want. You walk away. Then you come with me. If you don't, I'll file for paternity. I'll demand a DNA test the second that baby is born. I'll make sure the court knows you married under false pretenses. My hands went numb. Carter leaned toward the phone. Stop harassing my wife, he said. Damon scoffed. Who the hell are you? The man legally married to her, Carter said. And the one recording this call. Damon laughed once, ugly. You think I'm scared? I know people. I can make her job disappear. I can make your inheritance disappear. Then he hung up. For a moment, the vault was silent, except for my breathing. It felt like we'd stepped into the middle of a machine, gears turning, people pulling levers, my pregnancy caught between them like something fragile and disposable. Back at the condo, the red paint on our door looked darker, like old blood. Carter pulled out his laptop and plugged in the flash drive. Loretta's voice filled the room, soft, hoarse, unmistakably her. If you are hearing this, she said, then I am not here to speak for myself. So I will speak now, the way a mother does when she knows wolves are listening. Loretta named them Patrice, Reggie, Damon. She described the transfer they tried to push, the way they planned to call her incompetent, the way they planned to contest her will and use annulment as their knife. I wrote the widow's clause to protect her, Loretta said, and to protect my son from his own fear. Fight with receipts. The recording ended with a long, shaky breath. Carter stared at the screen, eyes wet but hard. She was dying, he said, and she still protected you. She protected us, I corrected, wiping my face. Carter's jaw tightened. So we finish what she started, he said. Tomorrow we meet with a lawyer who isn't Reggie. We file our documentation. We prepare for probate court. We make sure Patrice knows we have copies. Outside, rain returned, heavier now, drumming on the balcony like a countdown. We didn't sleep after that. Carter replayed Loretta's recording twice, pausing on the parts where she said names like he could squeeze extra meaning out of the syllables. I sat on the rug with my knees drawn up, staring at the red smear visible through the peephole window, my mind doing that ugly math fear always does. If they know where I work, they know where I live. If Damon has people, those people don't need to be smart to be dangerous, just willing. Carter finally closed the laptop. We need a second copy of everything, he said. We already have the flash drive, I whispered. And we make more, he said. Tonight. At 10:48 p.m., a knock hit the door. Not a polite knock. A hard, flat smack that rattled the peephole. Carter froze. He lifted a finger, silent, and moved toward the door with the calm of a man who decided panic was a luxury we couldn't afford. He checked the hallway camera on his phone. Two men stood outside, hoodies up, faces half hidden. One held a thick envelope. The other's hands were buried in his pockets, like he was holding something he wanted us to imagine. The first man knocked again. "Open up!" he called, voice low. My heartbeat shoved against my ribs. My hand flew to my stomach. Carter didn't open the door. He started recording with his phone, then spoke through the wood, voice steady. "Identify yourselves." "Just delivering paperwork," the man said. "Sign it and we're gone." Carter's eyes flicked to me, a look that said, "Don't move." "I'm not signing anything at my door," Carter called back. "Leave it with the building office." The second man laughed once, rough. "You think you're cute." The first man slapped the envelope against the door so hard it made me flinch. "You got until midnight," he said, "or we come back less friendly." Then they walked away, their footsteps echoing down the hallway like a threat that wasn't finished speaking. Carter waited until the hallway camera showed them exiting the building. Only then did he unlock the door, crack it open, and pick up the envelope from the floor like it was contaminated. He carried it to the kitchen, set it down, and opened it carefully. Inside was an eviction notice, bold, official-looking, stamped with a logo that tried hard to resemble a court seal. It claimed we were unlawful occupants and had to vacate within 24 hours. At the bottom, in smaller print, was a signature, Reggie Sloan. My throat tightened. "Can he do that?" Carter's jaw flexed. "Not like this," he said. "This is intimidation dressed as procedure." He flipped it over and found what he expected. The paper was cheap, the stamp slightly blurred, the phone number at the top not matching any courthouse directory. "It's fake," he said. My knees almost gave out with relief. Then anger rushed in and replaced it. "They're bold," I whispered. "They're desperate," Carter corrected. "And that's good. Desperate people make sloppy choices." He took pictures of the notice, then typed the number printed at the top into his laptop. A database search, a few keystrokes, and he leaned back. "It's a burner," he said, "but it pinged off a tower near your office an hour ago." I stared at him. "How can you tell?" Carter's mouth tightened. "Because I do this for a living," he said. "And because Damon isn't as invisible as he thinks." He clicked again, tracing patterns like he was following footprints in snow. "Someone is coordinating this," he murmured. "Same tower, same time window as when he showed up in your lobby." My stomach rolled. So Damon is the outside man. Carter didn't answer, but his silence was confirmation. A soft chime sounded from his phone, another camera alert. He opened the hallway feed again. The white SUV was back. Parked across the street from the building entrance, engine idling. My mouth went dry. "They're watching!" Carter's eyes narrowed. "Let them," he said. "Every minute they sit there is another minute on camera." He called the building supervisor, an older man named Mr. Leon who'd always smelled like peppermint and kept his keys on a thick metal ring. "Leon," Carter said, voice polite but firm, "there's a vehicle outside that's been circling our floor. I'm asking you to log it." Mr. Leon's voice crackled through the speaker. "You want me to call security?" "Call the non-emergency line," Carter said, "and write down the license plate." When Carter hung up, he turned to me. "Now we do the thing you don't want to do," he said. "What?" "We go back to the city clerk's office tomorrow," he said. "We talk to Ms. Higgins." My stomach clenched. The clerk's office was where my humiliation lived, where my wedding dress had felt like a joke. "Why?" I asked. "Because she saw everything," Carter said. And because if Damon has a lawyer friend seeing names pop up, that means someone leaked. We need to know who. At 2:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with another unknown text. Last chance, widow. Sign or suffer. I stared at the word widow until my vision blurred. Then I took a screenshot and dropped it into a folder labeled Receipts. Because if they wanted a widow, they were going to learn that a widow can be dangerous. The next morning, Carter drove us downtown again. The clouds hung low, turning the city into a gray film reel. The clerk's office was busy with couples holding folders, some excited, some exhausted, some already fighting. I felt the old shame flare as we walked past the same glass partition where I'd once sat alone, staring at a dead phone. Except this time, my hand was in Carter's, and my spine was straight. Ms. Higgins recognized me instantly. Her face softened. "Honey," she said, lowering her voice. "You okay?" I forced a small smile. "Not really," I admitted, "but I'm trying." Carter introduced himself, then showed her his ID and our marriage certificate. "We need to ask you something," he said. "Has anyone requested records about our filing? Any unusual calls?" Ms. Higgins's mouth tightened. "I'm not supposed to talk about other people's requests," she said, then glanced around like she was deciding what mattered more, policy or a woman's safety. She leaned closer. "A man called 2 days ago," she whispered. "Said he was your attorney. Asked questions about the time you filed, who was present, whether you looked stable." My skin prickled. "Did he give a name?" Ms. Higgins nodded. "Reggie Sloan," she said. "And he wasn't alone. Another man was with him." On speaker. He kept interrupting, joking like the whole thing was a game. I didn't catch his name, but his voice. It sounded familiar, like somebody who's used to being believed. My throat went dry. "Damon." Carter's eyes hardened. "Did you give them anything?" Ms. Higgins lifted her chin. "I gave them what's public," she said. "Not your private forms. But listen, he asked about a medical paper you had in your purse, an ultrasound, like he already knew it existed." My stomach turned. "How would he know that?" Ms. Higgins's eyes flicked to the side, guilt flashing. "Because when you dropped it," she admitted quietly, "I picked it up and put it back. I didn't read it, but—" She swallowed. "Reggie asked if I saw anything. I said no, but somebody in this building talks. There are cameras. There are clerks who gossip." Carter nodded, like he'd expected that answer. "Can you write a statement?" he asked. "Just that Reggie Sloan contacted you, asked about the filing and the ultrasound, and that another man was present on speaker." Ms. Higgins hesitated, then sighed like a woman who'd been tired too long to pretend rules were always moral. "Yes," she said. "Because what they're doing, it's evil." She led us to her desk and typed a brief affidavit. She signed it, had another clerk witness it, then stamped it with the office seal. "Paper," Loretta's voice seemed to whisper. "Receipts." As we left, Ms. Higgins touched my arm. "Honey," she said softly, "whatever you're in, don't let them make you small. Not anymore." Outside, the wind cut cold. Carter tucked the affidavit into our folder like it was gold. "They've been building a story," he said as we walked to the car. "Now we build ours." My phone buzzed with a new text. Midnight. Final. I didn't delete it. I didn't flinch. I saved it. Because the more they threatened, the more they proved exactly what Loretta had warned us about. Wolves don't like witnesses. And if Damon Price wanted to drag my pregnancy into court like a weapon, he was going to learn that a woman can carry life and still carry evidence. By morning, my hands were steadier. The storm hadn't passed, but I wasn't waiting anymore. The first probate hearing didn't feel like TV. There were no dramatic gasps, no last-second confessions shouted across a packed courtroom. It was quieter than that, worse than that. The kind of quiet where money moves in whispers and a woman's reputation can be erased with a polite sentence. Carter and I arrived early, dressed like we respected the building, even if we didn't trust the people inside it. My palms were damp. Carter kept his hand at the small of my back, not possessive, just steadying, as if he could anchor me to the floor. In the hallway outside Courtroom 3B, Aunt Patrice stood with her legal team like she was posing for a magazine spread about grief and power. Black dress, pearl earrings, a tissue held delicately in one hand. Reggie Sloane approached us with a folder tucked under his arm. "Mr. Miles, Mrs. Miles," he said smoothly. "Before we go in, I'd like to offer an off-ramp." Carter's eyes didn't move. "You mean the waiver?" Reggie spread his hands. "A disclaimer of interest, yes. It would spare you unnecessary stress during pregnancy. My clients are prepared to provide compensation." Patrice stepped closer, voice sweet enough to rot teeth. "Dani, nobody wants to hurt you. We just want what's right." "What's right?" I repeated, and the word tasted bitter. "You called me a stranger. You threatened annulment. You painted my door." Patrice blinked, offended by the accusation more than the act. "That wasn't me." "It came from your side," Carter said, "and we have it on camera." Reggie's smile tightened a fraction. "Let's not turn a family matter into a spectacle." Carter tilted his head. "You already did." The bailiff opened the doors and called the docket. We filed in, and my stomach tightened at the sight of the bench, the flags, the seal on the wall, symbols that were supposed to mean protection. I'd learned the hard way that symbols are only as strong as the people wielding them. The judge was a middle-aged woman with silver streaks in her hair and a face that looked like it had no patience for nonsense. Judge Rena Caldwell. She read the case title without emotion. Estate of Loretta Miles. Petition regarding conditional bequest and related motions. Patrice's attorney stood first. He spoke in clean, measured language about irregular circumstances, questionable marriage, and undue influence. He pointed at me without pointing, using phrases like the spouse in question and potential fraud. He suggested the courthouse wedding had been a manipulation designed to trigger an inheritance clause. He hinted at my pregnancy as if my body was evidence of moral failure. My throat burned, but I kept my chin up. Then Reggie Sloane stood as counsel for the estate, and my pulse spiked. How could he represent the estate while advising Patrice? How could he stand there like he was neutral? Carter's new attorney, Ms. Alana Pierce, a sharp woman in a navy suit with eyes like a scalpel, rose smoothly. "Your Honor," she said, "before we address the widow's clause itself, we need to address a conflict of interest that taints these proceedings." Reggie's jaw tightened. Alana turned toward the judge. "Mr. Sloane has been counseling Ms. Patrice Miles privately while also presenting himself as neutral estate counsel. We have invoices, emails, and a fabricated eviction notice bearing his name. We also have an affidavit from the city clerk confirming Mr. Sloane contacted her to obtain details about the filing and an ultrasound report." The courtroom murmured, soft, contained, like people trying not to show they were impressed. Judge Caldwell's eyes narrowed. "Mr. Sloane?" Reggie lifted his hands, calm. "Your Honor, these are misunderstandings, routine communications." Alana didn't blink. "Then it won't be a problem for the court to review the recording." Carter passed her Loretta's flash drive. Alana approached the clerk, submitted it, and within minutes, Loretta's hoarse voice filled the courtroom speakers. "If you are hearing this," Loretta said, "then I am not here to speak for myself. Patrice will say I was confused. Reggie will call me emotional. Damon Price will smile while he lies." Patrice's face went pale so fast it looked like someone pulled the color out of her. Judge Caldwell leaned forward. Loretta continued, naming dates, describing pressure, describing papers shoved at her bedside. Then she said the part that sliced through the room like a blade. "I wrote the widow's clause to protect my daughter-in-law and to force the wolves into daylight." The recording ended with Loretta's breath. Silence. Judge Caldwell looked directly at Patrice. "Ms. Miles," she said, voice cool. "Are you telling this court your sister fabricated this recording?" Patrice swallowed, eyes darting. "She was sick," she whispered. "That wasn't the question," the judge said. Patrice's attorney stood, flustered. "Your Honor, we object to—" "Sit down!" Judge Caldwell snapped. "I will allow it." Alana rose again. "Your Honor, we also have evidence that a third party, Mr. Damon Price, has been harassing Mrs. Miles and threatening to use paternity filings and a DNA test as leverage to force her signature on a waiver." A ripple moved through the spectators. Damon's name wasn't supposed to be in this room, but it was, and the air shifted like a door opening. And then, as if the universe enjoyed cruel timing, Damon Price walked in. He wore a gray suit that tried to make him look like a responsible man. It failed. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on me, and his mouth curled with that familiar confidence, the one that had kept me waiting for 3 years. He took a seat behind Patrice's table like he belonged there. My stomach lurched. "He's here," I whispered. Carter's hand tightened around mine. Alana didn't miss a beat. "Your Honor," she said, "since Mr. Price has chosen to appear, we request the court admonish him regarding contact with Mrs. Miles." Judge Caldwell's gaze cut to him. "Mr. Price," she said, "stand." Damon stood, smiling. "Yes, ma'am." "Do you have counsel?" the judge asked. "I'm just here to support the family," he said. Judge Caldwell's eyes stayed hard. "Support is not a license to harass. If you have filed anything regarding paternity, you do it through proper channels. Any threats or workplace disruptions will be treated as contempt and referred for investigation. Do you understand?" Damon's smile faltered. "Yes, ma'am." Alana stepped forward. "Your Honor, we submit screenshots of Mr. Price's messages, along with a recording of his calls, in which he states he will make her job disappear and make the inheritance disappear." Judge Caldwell's jaw tightened. "Accepted." Damon's face turned a shade lighter. Then Alana delivered the final blow. Additionally, the safe deposit box contained Loretta Miles' notebook. In it, she notes a meeting arranged by Ms. Patrice Miles with Mr. Price, in which he asked about Mrs. Miles's pregnancy and discussed using annulment to void the conditional bequest. Patrice stood up so fast her chair scraped. "That's a lie!" Judge Caldwell slammed her gavel. "Sit down, Ms. Miles!" Patrice's hands trembled as she lowered herself back into the chair. Judge Caldwell turned to Reggie. "Mr. Sloan," she said, "you will submit all communications between yourself and Ms. Miles to this court within 72 hours. Failure to comply will result in sanctions and referral to the bar." Reggie's mouth opened. No sound came out. Then the judge faced Carter and me. Her expression softened by 1 degree. "Mrs. Miles," she said, "the conditional bequest is clear. The widow's clause stands as written. The property remains subject to the condition of marriage for 12 months. My lungs filled like I'd been underwater. Not victory, not yet, but a foothold. Judge Caldwell raised her gavel again. "Furthermore, I am issuing a temporary protective order. No party affiliated with Ms. Patrice Miles, Mr. Sloan, or Mr. Price may contact, intimidate, or approach Mrs. Miles outside of legal counsel. Any violation will be addressed." The gavel fell. For the first time since the paint showed up on my door, I felt the ground steady under my feet. In the hallway afterward, Patrice tried to get close, face twisted with rage. The bailiff stepped between us. "This isn't over," Patrice hissed. Carter leaned in, voice low. "It is if you're smart." Damon hovered at the edge, eyes flashing between me and Carter, like he couldn't decide who he hated more. "Dani," he said, softer, "you're making a mistake." I looked him dead in the face. "No," I said. "I'm finally making a decision." Alana guided us toward the exit. "Don't celebrate yet," she warned. "They'll try different angles, but today you forced them into daylight." Outside, the clouds had thinned just enough for a strip of sun to cut across the courthouse steps. Carter squeezed my hand once, a silent promise. And as we walked down those steps, I realized something that surprised me with its simplicity. A courthouse wedding had started this mess, but a courthouse, paper, truth, and receipts might be what saves us. We didn't walk out of probate court holding hands like some movie couple. We walked out quiet, cautious, like 2 people who had just survived a car wreck and were waiting to feel the pain set in. Carter kept his palm against the small of my back as we moved down the courthouse steps, the winter air sharp in my lungs. Behind us, the heavy doors shut with a final thud, and for the first time in weeks, the sound didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a boundary. In the car, Carter didn't turn on music. He just sat there with both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, like the road might suddenly shift under us. "You okay?" he asked finally, voice low. I exhaled a laugh that almost turned into a sob. "I don't know what okay means anymore," I admitted. "But I'm not drowning." Carter nodded once, like he respected that answer. Then he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a folder, the one Loretta's letter had started, the one we'd finished with screenshots, camera clips, affidavits, and court orders. He set it between us like a third person. "Your name is on the record now," he said. "They can't erase you quietly." That sentence hit me harder than the judge's ruling, because for 3 years with Damon Price, I'd been easy to erase. A missed call, a text, an excuse. Next time. My whole life had been next time, until I ran out of patience and said yes to a stranger behind a glass partition. When we got back to the condo, Mr. Leon, our building supervisor, was waiting by the mailboxes, peppermint breath and keys jingling. He lifted his chin toward our door. "Paint's been scrubbed," he said. "Still faint, though, like it's stained." I walked down the hall and stared at the spot where Widow had been. The metal looked cleaner, but a shadow of red remained in the grooves, like a scar that refused to fully disappear. A part of me wanted to repaint the whole door, cover it, pretend it never happened. But another part of me, older than the last few weeks, older than my wedding dress humiliation, understood something Loretta had been trying to teach me from the grave. Scars are proof. We went inside. Carter locked the door, then checked the hallway camera feed, even with the protective order in place. Habit, survival. I set my purse on the counter and slid my hand down to my stomach again. I could still feel the baby, quiet, steady, unaware of how many adults were trying to make their life a bargaining chip. Carter noticed. His gaze softened for half a second. Then he looked away, as if softness was dangerous. "You should rest," he said. I sat on the couch instead. "Talk to me," I said. "Not like a lawyer. Not like a man building a case. Like you." He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes on the floor. For a long moment, I thought he'd refuse. Carter Miles was built out of control. Control was what kept him from breaking. Then he spoke. "I didn't plan this," he said quietly. "Any of it." "I know," I whispered. He swallowed. "When I met you at the clerk's office, I was empty. My mother was dying, my family was circling, and my ex had left like sickness was contagious. I didn't want romance. I wanted time, peace for my mother." His throat worked. "I thought if I could give her the picture she wanted, she could close her eyes without fear." "And me?" I asked, voice small. Carter's eyes lifted to mine. "You were a stranger," he said honestly. "But you weren't weak." I felt the words land, hard and unexpected. Weak. That was what Damon had trained me to be. Understanding. Convenient. Quiet. Carter exhaled. "When you said yes," he continued, "I saw someone who'd been hurt and still stood up. That scared me." I blinked fast, refusing tears. "Why?" "Because if you were strong," he said, "then this marriage of convenience wasn't going to stay convenient. It was going to demand something real." Silence stretched between us. The condo hummed, ventilation, refrigerator, the ordinary sounds of a life we hadn't meant to share. I looked down at my hands. "Damon texted me again while we were in court," I admitted. Carter's jaw tightened. "What did he say?" I pulled my phone out and read it, my voice flat to keep it from shaking. "You can't hide behind him forever. That kid is mine. I'll come back when you're tired." Carter stared at the wall for a long moment, then said, He's wrong. I looked up. About what? Carter stepped closer, slow, like he didn't want to startle me. About you, he said. You don't get tired. You get sharper. My throat burned. I didn't know what to do with that kind of belief. Damon had never believed in me. He believed in what I could do for him. Carter reached out, not for my hand at first, but for the folder on the table. He tapped it once. This is the truth, he said. This is the lock. Then his fingers hovered near my knuckles, hesitant. And you, he added, voice lower. You're not a pawn in their probate court drama. You're the reason my mother's plan worked. I swallowed. Loretta trusted me, I whispered. And I didn't even know how to be a daughter-in-law. Carter's mouth tightened into something that wasn't quite a smile. She didn't need you to be perfect, he said. She needed you to be brave. A tear slid down my cheek before I could stop it. Carter didn't wipe it. He didn't make a big show of tenderness. He just moved closer and rested his hand, warm, steady, over mine on my stomach. The contact wasn't romantic in a fairy tale way. It was real. I don't know what happens next, I said. We finish the 12 months, Carter replied. We follow the court order. We keep every receipt. And we build something that doesn't belong to them. I looked at him, searching for the line between duty and feeling. And after the 12 months? I asked softly. Carter's eyes held mine, unflinching. After the 12 months, he said, I want you to choose. Not because you're trapped, not because you need a name for the baby, because you want to. My chest tightened. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a door cracked open. Outside, rain started again, gentler than before, like the storm had lost its appetite. I stood and walked to the front door. The faint red stain was still there, a shadow in the metal. I didn't scrub it again. I touched it lightly, then turned back to Carter. They tried to name me, I said. Widow, liar, gold digger. Carter stepped closer. And what are you? He asked. I breathed in, slow and sure. I'm a mother, I said, and I'm done being disposable. Carter nodded once, as if something settled inside him too. He pulled me into his arms, firm, careful, protective, and I let myself lean into it. Not because I needed saving, because I finally believed I deserved safety. So if you're still here with me, don't click away yet. Because this wasn't just a story about a courthouse wedding or an inheritance clause. It was about what happens when a woman stops waiting to be chosen and chooses herself. And if you've ever been made to feel small, I want you to tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, because I need to know how far this truth travels. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the next video on your screen. There are more true life dramas waiting. And I'll be right here with you. Much love.